While we were gathered in June of 2022, the South Carolina Synod Assembly passed a resolution entitled Resolution on a Faithful Approach to the Death Penalty in South Carolina. The resolution cited several sources, including the Small Catechism, the Large Catechism, the Bible, and the ELCA Social Statement on the Death Penalty. It then called us to two resolutions, which read, Resolved, that the South Carolina Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, in Assembly, June 12 through 14, 2022, call upon the Synod Council, the Criminal Justice Task Force, and other interested persons to lead our Synod in studying criminal justice in general and the death penalty in particular, thereby equipping and mobilizing our Synod congregations to address the issues of criminal justice in reference to the death penalty. And be it finally resolved that the efforts of this group be reported back to our 2023 Synod Assembly, with recommendations for ways our entire South Carolina Synod can faithfully and effectively engage our state legislators. This video is the result of the Criminal Justice Task Force's work over the past year to accomplish those goals. We came into this work with some powerful tools. You'll hear more about the ELCA Social Statement on the Death Penalty, which was adopted in 1991. You'll hear from Pastor Reggie Cruz, an ELCA pastor who served for 20 years in the South Carolina Department of Corrections. Along the way, we also met Pastor Hillary Taylor, a United Methodist pastor who serves as the Executive Director of South Carolinians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty. The topic of the death penalty, like so many things, is a matter of facts, opinions, experiences, and stories. It is a place where our faith and our politics interact. It's a social matter that has real, tangible consequences on people's lives, whether or not they've ever been convicted of a crime. We know that it can be hard to have conversations about things that matter so much to us. And we know that this is a topic about which people can faithfully disagree. We hope that this work will be a starting place for Christians to consider their own opinions and viewpoints, and a prompt for conversation, reflection, and prayer.
I'm Reggie Cruz, ordained in 81, served in North South Carolina. Spent my last 10 years in ministry as a chaplain with the Department of Corrections. I got started in prison ministry by doing a year-long residency of clinical pastoral education and worked in two different institutions during that. And then sometimes later it evolved into a full-time position. The capital facility punishment's Broad River, and the chaplains were responsible for that. Matter of fact, when I got the position, I emailed Mel Amundsen, who had been my intern supervisor and who was on staff here at the time, and told him that that would be one of my duties. And he emailed me back, said not everyone gets to walk through the valley with other people. And that helped tremendously when I was dealing with that. I served at two executions. The first one, I spent about an hour with this inmate. He had been convicted of rape and murder while he was in the Navy in Charleston. That's how we got him. In the hour we spent with him, you realize that he was not the same person he was when he committed the crime. He took ownership of the crime. He took ownership of what was going to happen. He requested a Hebrew Bible because of his conversions. And we just had a great conversation. He was ready to go. He was ready for it to happen. Pastoral care is not for certain people. It's for everybody. And sometimes people forget that you've got staff, officers, doctors, nurses, inmates, fellow chaplains. All those people need pastoral care as well. Later on, one of the directors required the head chaplain for the department to be with him in his office during the execution, which says a lot for the director and for what he saw that as being. So pastoral care is for everybody, and not just during that time, but during my whole ministry there. It was for everybody. Now, my first execution was unusual because it was the first Friday in December, and my wife, who's a teacher, her school was having their Christmas party at Saluda Shoals that evening. And I leave from the institution to drive to Saluda Shoals, which is maybe 10 minutes away. So I go from the death, execution, to a celebration. And it took me 2 or 3 days really to process everything.
The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, through an extensive, participatory, and inclusive deliberation process, crafts social statements. Social statements are teaching documents meant to address broad social institutions and questions, and sometimes controversial topics. Social statements are not binding to individual Christians of the ELCA, they are meant to teach. In 1991, the ELCA's social statement on the death penalty, after a careful and lengthy process, was finalized and adopted. In summary, because of our relationship and ministry with all people affected by violent crimes, because of our sense of justice, and because of our concern regarding the specific use of the death penalty, this church opposes the death penalty.
We hope Pastor Cruz's story and this information have been helpful to you. There are, of course, many resources available to learn more, some of which are listed in a document linked in the description of this video. These resources tend to lean more toward the perspective of those who would abolish the death penalty. This is for 2 reasons. First, it's in line with the 1991 social statement of the ELCA. Secondly, the death penalty is the current status quo. Since those in favor of capital punishment don't need to change the system, there aren't as many resources devoted to that work.